It's as far as the, office building, proposed office building for the National Lab. McMillan, Pasden, Smith did the feasibility study, as all of you know. They've submitted the final study, which I think has been, passed out already. I asked them to do a proposal for the next phase, which they have done. And I don't know if y'all have seen this. I didn't make, it's about 50 pages. My copy was about worn out. But they have made a proposal to move forward with the next phase of that. Some of the scope of work is a project kickoff meeting, schematic design, design development, construction documents, construction administration, construction record drawing, civil engineering and landscape design, interior design and finish selection, furniture design and specification, audio visual design and interior signage, presentation renderings and marketing materials, and then the schedule. Their proposal, their base proposal for the work on this is $1,050,000, and then they've identified additional services as constructed record drawings, $35,000, civil engineering, landscape design, $147,850, interior design and finish $40,000, furniture design and specifications $35,000, audio visual design $54,625, interior design $15,500, historic preservation consultant $30,000. That comes up to around $1.4 million, somewhere in that range. We met recently with representatives from the city and with our attorney and with Gary Smith, the city attorney, to discuss this. The consensus was that even though I don't think legally we are required to put this out for bid, that we should do that. That we should go ahead and solicit bids from other firms, try to make it on a pretty short notice. Hopefully, if y'all approve that concept, we'll go ahead and get that out and get and ask them to have it in before the end of the year is what I'm hoping, if that's not unreasonable expectation. To that end, I have, with our attorney's assistance, I prepared a motion for a resolution seeking bids for the architectural design. I'll pass this around and give y'all just a minute to look at it. I'll make plenty of them, so. Hope we're doing it right.
So these companies that choose to put a bid in, that information would come, that they would base their bid off of, would come from.
Yeah, I have no experience in this, but the city does.
Essentially, the a.Aiken Corporation owns the city, because you did it under contract with the city, owns the initial work product from McMillan, Pasden, Smith, the feasibility study.
Gotcha.
Under which they did interviews with the prospective tenant and other stakeholders to determine that space summary of needs and basic elements of what would be involved in a building. So that's what would the bid document would be built around, as far as here are the requirements, now bid out building a building that generally meets these specifications. One important thing is, despite the recitation of their proposal, it's important that that be kept close.
Correct.
Because when we bid it out, everybody can't read their proposal, they can read their,
That was my question.
Yeah, to make sure that it's open and fair.
Well, it's gonna be on the internet now.
Well, it's general, but there's a lot of background that goes into that, but,
Buzz, I thought when you hired professional services, you put out an RFQ instead of a bid, a request for qualifications, and that you selected attorneys based on qualifications, architects based on qualifications, and not a bid number, not a low bid number. Is that not the case? Does anybody know?
the board can determine how you wanna do that. Essentially, the difference is, and in this, I think RFQ is more appropriate, because it is based on experience more and what they've accomplished and what you think of them. A bid is more hard and fast. You're not obligated to accept the lowest bid, but it is all about price. Request for qualifications is more about the quality and the comfort level. Resume with the group and
You know,
and
whether
how
they've done
that.
similar,
I wouldn't sound like
And you would still evaluate the price, of course, but it wouldn't be
Not
the
necessarily.
chief determining factor.
But isn't there, shouldn't be a scope of work in there?
Yes, the scope of work would be from the,
In
from the
RFQ.
feasibility study and the space summary created.
We don't expect the bidder to give the scope of work, shouldn't the
We will,
owner go out and say, this is what we want?
we have that, and that's what we would
That
provide
would-
as
that
far
would
as
go
the,
out.
correct.
The other side of it is, shouldn't we give the information that we've already paid $250,000 for, which had information about what the lab
That's
wants and all that, that would be in this, that
That's what
all
we
the
said.
people would get that. So obviously, the scope of work would include the information we already have about where we came up with this 25,000 square foot lab lease. You see what I'm saying? I mean, we've already spent $250,000 to have all those meetings, so all that information needs to be given to these bidders,
I
right?
violently agree with you.
Huh?
Yes.
So I mean, it's just not, well, we wanna see what kind of work you do, we need, you see what I'm saying? I think.
you know, a normal RFQ does all the things that you're talking about.
Okay.
And we've not spent $250,000 yet, but just for the record. The architectural part has only been part of it, and the actual number is probably closer to 200, including legal fees, public relations.
Glad we haven't spent it yet, but.
I think what we want to be respectful of is that we don't want another firm to come in and say, we need to start from scratch.
That's right.
Well, I've got a question on that. I mean, we were hired, I think, to do a feasibility study with marketing and communications, come back to the city with a recommendation on site. We did that. So it looks like now, this is a whole nother process, a whole starting all over again. So is the city asking us to move this forward with us becoming the developer and now doing, because I thought when we turned in our site selection, at that point, we were through. Our job, we did what we were asked to do. So are we being formally asked by the city to take on the seeking bids for architectural design? Or so my question is, are we moving toward now being the developer for this project?
I think that's the next discussion, that's exactly what our role is going to be. This is just for the bid for the architectural thing, which we've already received from McMillan. This does not commit us to any further steps at this point. Now we're gonna have that discussion, but this alone, that's why I want to separate this from the discussion of anything where we might, so technically you're correct, this doesn't cost anything to anybody, and we don't have to accept any bids.
Well, where do we stand on the lease negotiations? Is that still in process?
That's still in process.
I think.
But based on the
Bill's got a good
language-
point, is that this may be the next step forward, but it seems to me like this should be a step forward to the city to say, hey, this is what we recommend if you wanna move forward on this. The next step is try to, and let the city say yay or nay on you know, we don't have the money to pay this.
It's not hurt, but
Huh?
I don't know why the city would do that when it's
asking for here. So I mean, it seems to me like, I understand where we wanna move this forward because it'd be a logical step that, you know, we were hired to move the other process along, but then if we recommend this, this should be sent to the city and let them say, yes, this would be a good idea to move forward about the next step.
The meeting that we had with the Aiken Corporation and the attorneys, the language in the referendum, that's essentially what it says, is this is a proposal by the Aiken Corporation to be considered, and no action will be taken until it is taken up by city council, and then they say, yes, we'd like you to do that, or no, we would.
I agree, we do enough studies and don't move stuff forward. I can understand that, but it's no question that this is a proposal that the city is going to have to approve, right? Excuse me, I mean, they're the ones with the money, but anyway, I understand what we're doing. We want, this is a proposal from us to move forward, non-committal on getting the next bit of information that goes to the city.
This is not a proposal to the city. This is what I am proposing, that we go out and seek bids for this, for the next phase. Not that we accept the bids, not that we spend a penny on anything. That is gonna, as you point out, is gonna require going back to city council and working out some sort of formal agreement, similar to what we had before.
Council's gonna want to answer the question that you're gonna present to them, they're gonna want certain information. He's saying, I wanna have the information to be able to answer that question.
And the two contingencies that are built into it are a formal commitment from DOE and an agreement between the Aiken Corporation and the city. So yes, we're all saying, once again, the same thing.
In the next phase, that's correct. As far as what I passed out is just for the architectural side, that's all it is.
But before it has any actual effect or
Yeah.
extent.
Wouldn't we have to disclose all the conditions to the firms that are gonna be spending a lot of time and money to prepare the bid? That we can't accept it without city approval? I mean, who's the bid to? Is it to us or is it to the city?
No, the bid would be to us, but
But we can't accept, we can't approve one of those
That's right.
bids.
I think we should disclose that.
Huh?
It should be disclosed.
So that needs to be disclosed. It get- By the city dumping this on us, it's getting to be very hairy. What Pat and Joe brought up, it gets very, very, complicated.
Well, the next item, which I always worry about, is exactly what is our agreement with the city. In other words, that,
We don't have one yet.
well, that part has got a lot of work to do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
gotta, you know, that's the next step before the city even says, yes, y'all go forward. If they do say go forward, they may decide that they're gonna do it themselves and whatever they wanna do, but that agreement with the city about the ownership of this, the management agreement, whatever that entity is, how much the agreement is between us and the city, if the city decides for us to move forward. That's extremely important, and it's gotta be very detailed.
Yeah.
So, but that's,
So for clarification for what David is saying, where it says bid,
Are the last three resolved
Correct,
photos
right.
worded correct?
so that needs to be RFQ is what you're suggesting, or if it's,
I say you go back to whoever drafted this and say, we want this written as an RFQ and see, let him tell you where it needs to be changed.
oh, I got you, okay.
Some
I
places
agree.
it needs to say, instead of saying, referring to a bid, it will be a statement of qualifications. The overall process will be request for qualifications. There's also in the title, it says bid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd start over.
It needs to be
with the same-
reworked.
Yeah.
But just for my edification, so essentially, trying to look at this in terms of when I work with a client, we're essentially just being asked to do some due diligence. This is at no cost. We're going out to say, as we typically do, there's 3 to 5 companies that we feel could potentially have the qualifications to address this project. We're just asking them to submit what they've done, what that looks like. That's not going to cost them to basically submit their resume to apply for a potential job. We're just doing some of the due diligence to just get information to then provide to the city. That's essentially all we're being tasked with, right? It's like finding a like, if, Charlie buys a property and now we're gonna say, okay, we want an architect, well, let's get 3 bids to see who potentially we're gonna use. We're just asking essentially for qualifications for the scope of the work, but that's not gonna cost us anything. It doesn't normally cost us to say, hey, we're looking for vendors. Is that accurate?
But without a bid, but a number, all we're gonna get is other people who may be qualified or may not be qualified.
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking for the RFQ. I mean, I've heard RFQ used as a request for quote, also request for qualifications or RFP. I think they're interchangeable. So are we just trying to find sources, whether locally or within the CSRA, that would be potentially interested in the project, and we're asking are they qualified and what they would potentially charge
Yes.
for the project? Is that accurate? Because that's not gonna cost us anything.
No. And these outfits, they do these RFQs every day. I mean, for them to produce this is not outside of their normal routine.
Every day they come in and look for an opportunity to pop up,
Right.
so that they can respond to it.
So it sounds like we're just being tasked with finding vendors, if you will, to put their hat in the ring. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's the way
I'm looking for something similar to what these folks did.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you're looking for a number. I mean,
Yeah.
without doing that, you don't,
Yeah.
we haven't even really done, I think, nothing to pull the trigger. Right.
No,
So it's really no commitment, we're just helping the process, we're just doing due diligence as a body associated with the city, there's no liability, we're just saying, okay, we all may know somebody in the industry, hey, you should look at them, they're local, or they're out of town, or they're competitive, or they have a great reputation.
Right.
Is that a fair understanding? So are we voting on doing that job?
And getting some pricing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Getting
Not gonna lock them
proposals,
Yeah.
into any
what the
pricing or.
Yeah.
Well, we've already disclosed one of the prices.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
Well, that's not wrong. I'll take the blame to that. I don't know that it needs to go in the minutes, but you're right, I should not have mentioned the prices there. And certainly, we won't put it in part of
It'll be chronicled.
Now, maybe just me and business wise, but I would like to be able to use this as a way to get the lab to at least give us that memorandum of understanding and say, hey, lab, we're moving forward with a lot of studies and all this kind of stuff. Would you please get us a non-binding memorandum of understanding so we can at least start this? Just to get them moving, say, listen, guys, you say you want this, would you please give us a memorandum of understanding, which you promised us 3 weeks ago?
Hoorah.
I guess what I'm saying is this premature, and at least get the memorandum of understanding from the client. You see what I'm saying? That's the way business is. You don't run out and ask for proposals and all
Well,
that kind of
that's
stuff.
not necessarily true, because I think if you had an investor that had a piece of dirt and you wanted to build a spec building on it, you wanna know the cost of what that is gonna be to get a return on the investment.
They can run concurrently.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily premature.
I
I mean, that conversation's being had.
I believe they both can happen at the
Yeah,
same time.
you wouldn't go out and do one versus
If
the other.
we're being asked to build a 36,000 square foot spec building for the city of Aiken,
Who, you have
I'm designing
potential
my
tenants and they
right
want
now
that building.
about getting out of here. This is not, we're not doing any of this at the lab.
Don't disagree.
Before we spent $1 million, I would say you're exactly right. But up until that point, I think we can be doing 2 tracks at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way you're proposing this, it really is an extension of the original contract, even though that's a little bit of a stretch.
it's really not part of the contract at all. It's
No, I'm
just
talking
something that I'm
about-
proposing that we do in furtherance of this project. At
There's
no
no
cost to
cost.
anyone.
Yeah, there's no cost on it.
And then, once we get them back, this is not a decision to move forward or to spend a penny.
Well, just
Just
for
kind
my
of.
edification, if we do move forward, call the lab for me and just say, hey, when are you guys gonna tell us something?
They're gonna tell you they got a call out of that.
Yeah.
We are having discussions with them. they work differently from the private sector.
All right, so where do we stand?
We need to take a vote on that?
Well, we're gonna vote on this, we're gonna add.
You'll probably heard enough of me at the last meeting, so I apologize. But I still think we need a schedule of what we need to do in the order that we need to do it, that makes sense. There's too many tripwires out there that, we can mess up on. I think we need to sit down and go through a chronological order of what we do. MOU from the lab, agreement with the city, so that it's a logical progression of what we need to do. This is going to be too complicated if we just
Take it one at a time.
take it, if we just, we're talking $20 million here. This has got to be done in a very logical, sort out manner. And the fact that you got the city, involved makes it even more complicated because.
Don't you think it's so great to just go ahead and get these bids in from the architect and with no further commitment at this point?
But we may be wasting our time if the lab never gives us an MOU, and we're not wasting our time, I'm not worried about that, we're wasting other people's time, we lose credibility. I just think we just need to take it logical. Pat's got a good point. If the MOU from the lab is the next thing we need logically, and from a business standpoint, then that's what we need to get. And we don't need to waste people's time, because if we don't get that, we're not gonna sign a contract with a architect. I really am concerned about shooting from the hip on all this stuff. I'm very uncomfortable with it. So I'm just sorry, I hope I'm not throwing a wrench into the works here, but,
Well, we could,
I just think we need the steps laid out. We may even need legal counsel looking over our shoulder, to make sure that we've
We
got
have
it.
that, the attorneys, Gary Smith and our attorney were both at the meeting we had last week to discuss this stuff.
Well, let's get a list of what we need and when we need it by. And I'm also, Joe, I don't wanna have any offense for you, but when we set up the LED and all, we had legal counsel and all telling us that if we did not separate that, building out from the a.Aiken Corporation, we would be jeopardizing a nonprofit status.
That is true, we shouldn't have gone to escort though.
Yeah, and then you give us, so I think when we get your recommendation as to the path forward, we need to get a third independent party, a tax attorney, for your protection as well as ours,
100%.
to look at it and make sure that that's right, because we don't wanna do anything to jeopardize that nonprofit status, and we're getting 2 recommendations from very qualified people, so I think that's got to be resolved before we go forward. So I just wanted to get all that off my chest. Those are the things right now that are worrying me. And I feel like the next step that we need to make is to have, the chronological order of what needs to be done and when. In other words, you do this, nothing else gets done until that's done. And then you go to the next step, nothing else gets done until that's done. And we need to have that worked out, and I believe in conjunction with our legal counsel to make sure they don't see any problems or pitfalls. And I hope I haven't disrupted the whole process here, but that's just the way I feel about it.
Norman?
I think that a vision board would be wonderful for every person on this board. I think for all of us to see the way this project would lay out would make us more educated and better advocates for the program. I love the idea. As far as what we're asking to be done here, this is normal business practice. At Dumpster Depot, we're constantly quoting items for brokers who don't even have the business yet, but they wanna know what the pricing would be. I don't think that what you're asking for today is outside of reasonable. And we rarely get the business we quote, and we know that going in, but we get enough of the business that keeps us excited to keep bidding more business, so,
But that's a case where the contract is gonna be awarded, you see. In other words, when you send in your quote, and other people do too, somebody's gonna get that contract. Whereas we're asking them to send in a quote, and may not be giving anybody the contract, you see. That's I don't think if you knew there were a lot of contingencies on the other end, you might waste your time with it. I might be wrong.
but we actually do quote often where there is no guarantee of anybody getting
anybody
business.
getting-
Right,
well,
they're,
okay.
they're just searching for business and again, a broker is a big company that gets a company and they say, we can quote your waste, and they find local people to quote it, but they may not like the price and they may never change. I think that in business, it happens a lot more than maybe you realize.
And at the city puts out a lot of these types of things that
Right.
ends up being projects that never happen. A lot of-
I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to see whether that is a midline price, is it crazy, or is it so low we should be concerned? I think that, I don't think information gathering is a bad idea, especially if we are talking about a project this big. And during the time that we're waiting on this though, I think that we could get a timeline together of what we think a project would look like. I think it's a great idea. I also think this is.
Keeps us along the way. I think we could use this also as a tool to encourage the lab to move a little faster with the MOU. Say, look, we'd like to get this out, but I agree also that, I like the timeline thing. I do, Tim. I think that's smart. It's just my thought. But I see.
So Buzz, I'd be willing to work on a task force to produce a timeline.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to have some resources and, I mean, just knowledge, people with knowledge of how to do it, but I'd be willing to work on that. Would you join me on that? All right. Matt, and Philip.
All
Norman.
right. I'm volunteer for that.
He's in the committee
It's
of the
gonna be,
whole.
committee of the whole.
Meeting of that board would be right after this, and everybody would be on it, so.
But couldn't we encourage, or try to encourage the lab that we're taking this next
We're moving
step
forward.
Hey, you already got 2 or 3 people doing it weekly, you could join in.
They
Keep in mind that-
waive their own pays, they're getting people looking over their shoulders from Washington. I mean,
And we've got
yes.
a new mayor stepping in, and as we mentioned last meeting, you know, there's some, we would like to at least allow time for her to get a chance to be seated and have a role in all this too, so, you know, while the rush is great, there's some reasons not to rush.
Something I don't mind being quoted on is that people in this room have contacts with the legislative delegation and the governor's office. They started this ball rolling at the request of the Battelle Savannah River Alliance. Those are the folks who haven't been involved in the conversations. We've been communicating on a weekly basis about this is what we need and hearing, well, just wait and we'll get to it. I think that maybe it's time for the governor's office and the delegation who have allocated these funds to go back to DOE and say, you asked us for a favor and are you doing it or not? They need to get some feedback from those folks.
I agree. I think it's time that we pass it up to somebody that, and I don't know whether it's the city, I don't know whether it's, I don't think Senator Young is aware of this.
Right, we had a conversation with him last week, and I mean, this isn't confrontational, it's just that they're the folks who opened the purse strings and said this is a priority for us. We need to make sure that they're involved, and the lab folks ask them for the money, so they're the other side that needs to be weighing in on this.
I agree. Well, what do y'all want? I mean, like I said, the only thing that I would propose for today is to try to get these bids out for the architectural, for the next architectural step, not to take any further steps at this point.
That makes sense.
Could I add something? Could I add something?
Sure.
My husband works in an independent contracting company that interfaces with DOE. He's written about $6 billion worth of RFPs for the Department of Energy. This is what he does professionally. And it's complicated, writing an RFP or an RFQ. Basically, if you don't have a professional do this, or someone at least advise you in a professional status, it's sort of garbage in, garbage out. If you don't ask the specific right questions, you won't get the answers that are gonna take you to success in the end on a $20 million project.
Great.
This request is not to DOE though, this is just to other architectural firms.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what they do. They bring in bids from all kinds of architectural and constructional firms. That's what my husband does, so I have some exposure to this. And like I'm saying, the RFP process, the RFQ process, it's technical and it's specific, and you may wanna get some advice on that, because if you don't ask the right questions and say it the right way, you won't get the right answers, and you'll end up going down a path that may not take you where you wanna go. I start out on the right foot, is what I'm saying, get some expert advice on writing the RFPs. And I feel like definitely that's true about the hotel too, although I know that's not related, but.
What this will go through with the GAO as far as a lease, that's what, they'll be approved, they'll submit it and all that, as far as what rent are they gonna pay and all that, and that's, so yeah, that's true. But this is a lease of a property, which, you know, we've got Department of Energy out at the village, and, you know, you go through it, but it's a lease, we're a long way away from a lease. Only thing we want is this money that's already been allocated. The money is allocated from the funds, the $600 million, and the money is sitting there. All we're asking for is that the people requested it, who was DOE, requested that they get money to have an off-site office. That's why it was even in there. And all we're asking for is, y'all requested it, how about letting us know that we have a memorandum of understanding, non-binding, to let us move forward. That is a perfectly legitimate. Now, I don't have a problem with this as long as it's cleaned up. But I'm with Joe about, we've done what we're asked to do. Now we're gonna say, city, we suggest we do this. I understand why we're doing it, but, there's a whole lot of stuff that still to be done. And
It's Lisa, right?
Yes.
I think what she's saying is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, as I understand it, is if we request a proposal to do this job, and we don't have a professional write that request so that we get all the pertinent information we need, we could have a problem down the road with this project of something that needs to be done that wasn't considered that may end up costing us money. Is that correct?
That's right. When the vendors come back to you with quotes, if you haven't asked the right questions in the right ways, you're gonna get quotes that don't really help you, and you're just gonna waste your time bringing in quotes that
Yeah, I think it's more important on the RFP side than the RFQ side,
same thing.
to an extent.
Ben, do you have good examples of RFQs that the universities issued?
Not that I know of offhand that would apply to this, I don't think, no. But I do agree with, you know, the site, and I've been somewhat silent in this because 2 years ago when I was here, of course, the university was one of the sites for this building that was proposed, and I'll just, in full disclosure, I've always said to Vicky and others that I'm in favor of what is in the best interest of the mission of the building, wherever that is, and then I was gonna support that, so that's why I've been kind of, frankly, silent in all of this, but I do agree with Pat, you know, just, it would be nice to get an update from the lab about this, just, you still doing this, or not, frankly, because I have not heard much of anything, I haven't heard anything that wasn't gonna happen, but I have not gotten any updates, and nor am I entitled to any, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that's really reasonable, just to get some
I guess
information.
what I'm saying, if we have to have a special meeting next week, I don't care, 24 hours from now, midnight, I don't care, when we get the MOU, and that we send this out and tell the labs that, listen, we wanna get started, and we're waiting to, you know, put bids out and whatever, but we'd like to have an MOU. You understand what I mean? And
I say, let's call for the question.
I don't know what the question is, but,
Well, I mean, let's, someone make a motion on what you wanna do with this, and either,
Now, I'm not opposed to getting, I mean, I can't put this request out, I don't know how to do this, but I know the city's done this on a number of occasions, I believe. And certainly, we'll need somebody that knows what they're doing to help put it together, but I would like to move forward with getting the request out there, at least to get these bids back.
Yep.
And again, at no cost to anyone. That's my That's what I would like to do. Now, if the board doesn't wanna do that, it'll come, I think if we wait on something definitive from the lab at this point, we may be waiting a while.
Yes.
And I'd at least like to take this step forward to get this much further down the road. That's my suggestion.
But as long as this is done in the precise way, like it was said, I'd like to.
Yeah, I think
move
what,
forward.
I don't mean to steal your thing, but I think what you're saying is get this tuned up, redrafted properly, properly with the proper experts. And if, once that's done, you want to vote here now to say, let's go ahead and then issue it for qualifications.
Correct. And push the MOU.
Don't make that part of your motion.
I'm not. So that's in form of a motion. Is everybody clear on that? In other words, let's tune this up in the right way it should be
To center it on qualifications.
centered on by qualifications and done by, right, and let's try to move forward with it. If it doesn't cost us money, at least we can get that done. The timeline is being done, so.
I second.
Okay. Are we all gonna agree? Y'all want like a hand vote on this? Are there those who wanna vote against it?
Are we
Does
gonna
everybody
get a
understand?
professional to draw off?
Okay. We're gonna get somebody.
That's part of the
Won't
motion.
be wise myself.
Yeah.
We can bring as part of the motion, we can, we're working on it together. We can bring the text of the RFQ back to the board for review before it's released.
Or
Let's
email
keep
that.
moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know that we've got the ability to properly assess it. I think if we get a professional, an expert to draw it up for us, we would accept that.
Well, I think that's what he's alluding to.
That's what I'm alluding to.
Who drew up the contract for the $250,000?
It was a combination of me and Tim, perhaps Gary Smith, I'm not sure.
Tracy Green was involved too.
It had to be the city, right? City provided
City,
the
their
expertise.
attorney, our attorney, Buzz, and probably another handful of.
That's a totally different animal than
Yeah,
this.
but that animal is where we started from, that was Joe's point, okay? So, in the city, was the animal that had the $250,000, right? We didn't have it, and I guess we could have exposed ourselves, I remember, I think for $125,000, but the city then steps in, right? The $250,000,
We wrote every check so far out of our funds.
and
We
we're
didn't have
getting reimbursed back from the city, that was
Correct.
one of my questions on the financials, from the amount we've expended, right? Which is coming from the city, right?
Let me get back to the motion.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
Yes, sir.
And the motion is?
The motion,
The RF, or the bid document that's been proposed is gonna be edited by professionals to, as needed to have an RFQ.
Amended to become an RFQ is done by an appropriately qualified specialist.
Correct.
Which the city has on staff that have continuing education requirements and everything else. But, you can, if you wanted to go so far, you can get another, what some of these firms will do, some of these architectural firms, they'll draft the RFQs for you to issue to other people. But that's a fee for service.
Might be worth it. Yep.
Okay. That's your motion, Sam?
That's my motion.
As clarified by Jason?
Yes.
And Philip.
Is that clear?
And Philip.
Is the motion clear?
Could you read the motion just so that we all know exactly what it says, please? Sam made a motion and Charlie seconded for a bid document to be created and edited to have RFQ. And that's where you started talking.
by an appropriate specialist.
By appropriate specialist.
That's it.
Which would include, figures, right? Which would include.
To include.
It would include.
Include a bid.
A bid.
to include a bid.
An RFQ does that.
Moving forward at all.
We did, when I was on council, we did a number of these for different things. This was how we would do stuff for professional services. And so the city will have somewhere, not only do they have people that do these, but they'll have somewhere some sample documents if we ultimately wanted to go off of those. I mean, I remember reviewing RFQs on council, the proposals.
All right, we'll get someone qualified to help us put it together.
That's the purpose of it.
And the city has someone qualified that can do that?
They did, I've been gone for a little while, they did have that.
We have a procurement officer, but we will reach out to other professionals to see what is available.
Okay. Motion's been made, seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I got a weak eye.
I need glasses.
Okay.